Hi everyone, welcome to episode number 33. For this episode, I am bringing back Keith Halperin and Tim Hansen for third Dear Recruiter cast. But before I begin, I want to talk about some exciting content I have planned for the next couple of months. For the next podcast, I have Michelle Augustine from Corner Office Image to talk about the secret to dressing to impress at workplace or for a job interview. Next, I have Jatina Garwal, who is the CEO and co-founder of Cognizant Technology Solutions, to share some tips with you, especially if you're interested in working for a startup company, how to vet an opportunity and how to map out your career for a startup company or within a startup company. And then next, I am also in the process of booking a millennial expert who will discuss how to wow your employer with a strong 30, 60, 90-day plan. Now, back to this episode. I'm super excited to have Keith Halperin and Tim Hansen come back again. And for those of you who missed our inaugural podcast, here's an introduction of Keith and Tim.
My name's Tim Hansen. I'm the owner of SMI Recruiting here in the San Francisco Bay Area, California. And we focus on placing sales, marketing, and engineering professionals in the tech space.
Good. How about you, Keith?
I'm Keith Halperin. I have been a recruiter for over 30 years in one capacity. I've seen it, I've done it, and I'll tell some for a price.
Good.
But seriously, I'm a very broad-based recruiter. I've done technical, I've done non-technical, and I have seen a thing or two. So I'm very glad to share what little I know with your audience.
Many recruiters probably hate to admit it, at least I do, is that there's a chasm between job seekers and recruiters or hiring managers. And because there's so much unknown, job seekers tend to Google interview questions as part of their preparations, consuming articles written by prolific writers, and confirming knowledge oftentimes they already know, and that is the best case scenario, or confuse the heck out of them. And of course, that's the worst case scenario. So I created Dear Recruiter cast series to explain why a recruiter or hiring manager, what they're looking for at a candidate in a certain way, or why they're looking at them in a certain way, or debunk some of the outdated beliefs about interviews. And this is a typical format of the Dear Recruiter cast. Each episode, I'll bring up several interesting interview or career-related questions I come across in some of the most trusted media sources such as Glassdoor, Inc.com, or even Fast Company. And our guests will comment on the points the authors addressed in their articles. So, these are my two articles for this month. The first one is single interview question to end all interview questions. So the question I have for the two of you today is, what is your go-to question that will really tell you if someone is the right fit for your clients or for a company?
Well, I'll address this probably in a couple different ways. I think sometimes when someone's going to interview with an HR department, we're more personality driven somewhat. But usually if you're talking to a CTO, a director of IT, sometimes get to the point. And when they interview engineer to engineer, that fits very, very well. When that's with an HR person or a recruiter sometime, unless you get it and you understand that that's what that world can be sometime. I'm not talking about arrogance. I'm just talking about let's get to the point. I don't have time for a lot of idle chit-chat. That's why sometimes we may not think they interviewed well with us, but they get on well with the team because the team itself is that way. So I always say you got to kind of look at that dynamic. Now, that being said, aside from that aspect, is there a difference between arrogance and confidence? Absolutely. Look, I don't have any problem with someone being a little bit cocky. That's okay. Exactly. You're going to go into sales or something. You need a little bit of attitude, or you're not going to make it. But there is also an element of being able to learn and being able to willing to work with others. And being cocky is fine. Being a jerk, you know what? There's more than just one candidate, and I would probably just move on and find somebody different. So being able to distinguish, okay, yeah, in this environment requires a little bit of attitude to make it, whether you're in a head of engineering or a head of sales. But if it gets beyond that and you're just a jerk, then you know what? Nobody's going to succeed with that very long. No one's going to want to work with that person on a team, me included. And we're just going to move on. I mean, there's more, even though we're in a candidate-driven market, I'll still find somebody else for my client or my hiring manager.
Exactly. Those are great points. Now, going back to the original question of single interview questions to end all interview questions. And for those of you listeners out there who's interested in this particular article, it's going to be in my show notes. But for me, there are actually two, but they're sort of one and the same. So the first one is, what do you know about the company? So for me, being the in-house recruiter, I do ask the question, what do you know about such and such company? Now, I think for me, my experience, it requires so much. Being a sales and marketing recruiter, there are times it requires so much domain expertise. So if you're in a particular space and you sell to very similar customers, you should really know the marketplace. You should know the competitive landscape. So for them to not know the company, to me, it's a bit of a red flag. That tells me that you haven't really done the homework. And the other question, to me, it's pretty similar, is, what questions do you have for me? I personally don't really like people when I invest so much time in talking about the company, talking about the position, instead of digging a little bit deeper on, so how about the territory? What is the territory? Percentage of sales professionals meeting the quotas, or how about the average deal size? Just drum up some position-related questions, but instead they would say, actually, what is the next step? I don't have any other questions. To me, that tells that you didn't care too much about your career journey. So that is just me. What do you guys think? I mean, feel free to correct me. Feel free to shed some light to the way I think. Maybe there's a different way to think about those two particular questions. What do you guys think?
I'd say almost all the time that would be exactly correct, Helen. The one exception would be if someone has done their homework and you have done an exceptional job of explaining virtually everything that needed to be done in the course of the interview, and they said, no, you told me what I needed to know. And this is what I do in my own interviewing, saying I will likely have 1,000,001 questions following up. Right now, you've answered everything I knew.
Yeah.
But most of the time, people don't do that. Most of the time when they don't answer questions, just as you said, they haven't done their homework or they don't care very much about the job.
I think you are spot on with your questions, and that's pretty much exactly how I end the conversation when I'm done. Actually, when I open up the interview to begin with, I always ask them, what do you know about our company? And again, if they haven't even looked up the website, they haven't done any reading at all, to me, that's a red flag. I mean, come on, really? I mean, how it begins is often how it ends. So if you haven't even if you haven't invested that time in the beginning, you're probably going to be like that as someone to work with further down the road. And I always do that right off the beginning. I thank them for their time. I know we're always busy. By the way, did you have a chance to look at our website and the position and the information I sent to you? And do you have any questions out of the gate? No, I didn't even look. Not
man.
good. And
Then why are you here?
Yeah.
and then toward the end of that, again, Helen, to your point, I kind of leave it to, as we're pretty much coming to the conclusion of our interview, do you have any final questions for me? No, I don't have any at all. Not really a good sign. I want someone that's really thinking about these things as we're having a discussion, and kind of, do some due diligence, put some thought into it, ask some clarifying questions, at least make sure you heard me correctly. And if it's, no, I don't have anything at all, that demonstrates one of two things. One, either you're really not interested and you just don't care and this was just practice for you, and that's fine. Then this interview is over and it's time to move on. Or you're not going to be thorough, especially if it's an engineering position. You're not going to see things through, and especially the engineering positions I work on, you cannot have that trait about you. You're not going to make it.
Yeah.
So, I would say that's probably my opening question of every interview, and that's usually my closing question in any interview. And I'm listening really hard to the answers to both.
Good. Now, the content of this particular article, single interview questions to end all interview questions, I thought that was a really powerful question. It is, how did you prepare for this interview? And I never thought of that until this week. I think I might have read the article earlier, and I came across this candidate. I spoke with him, and I was really, really tempted to ask him, what did you do to prepare for this call? Because everything this person said was just very buzzword. It is like this person just looked through the website while being on the phone with me, said a couple of buzzwords, and that was it, and expect me to fill in the blank. I chose not to because I wasn't sure if I would come across really arrogant to ask that question. But I thought that was a really great question that tells you how this person's thought process, how serious this person is with a job search, and even just the level of detailed and planning when it comes to something as simple as a job interview with a recruiter. The second article, it is here's how to get a sales job. In summary, this article offers 4 areas to look out for when interview for a sales job. I feel like all of those points are very common, and again, you can find a link to the article in the show note. But for the two of you, what do you typically look for in a sales professional before presenting them to your clients?
Tim?
I knew you were
told
going
you, Tim shines in this area. He's an excellent salesperson himself, and he looks for a lot of them. So let her rip, Tim.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, Helen, that's a prime focus of my company at SMI. That's why the abbreviation stands for that is SMI is Sales, Marketing, and IT, which to me encompasses, the technology group in the engineering. But sales and marketing professionals, and for our purposes of discussion, we'll just say sales. I'm usually looking for the following. One, do you come from industry? Some companies will do lateral transfers, but more often than not, they want you from the industry. But the other thing more important is, again, I want to look at, what do you want to do next? I mean, engineers usually focus on the technologies and what's going to help them be marketable. For a salesperson, it's usually going to be, is this product viable? Is this product something that is going to sell well in the market? I'd expect them to have done their homework on that. And I wouldn't represent a company that's not doing well that way anyhow. No one's going to place a salesperson selling horse and buggy whips when the cars are here, right? So, coming into that aspect, assuming that, we're in a market where things sell well. What I want to do and what I want to hear from the candidate, do you want to do it? Have you carried a quota before? Are you used to adaptable change in environments? If it's a startup environment, Are you used to being flexible and wearing many hats? If it's a large corporate environment where it's usually metric driven, how comfortable are you with documenting your sales activity in Salesforce or whatever CRM you're going to be using? Finding out those things that, in addition, not only to the sales job, where do you thrive the most? And most good salespeople, they can sell in a corporate venue as well as a startup, and if they're really good. But the key is, for me, to put someone who's going to stick and really knock it out of the park is, yeah, you can probably do both, but which one, if you know yourself well, do you feel you thrive in the best? And focus on that. Not to say you can do one or the other, but let's play to your strengths. And then, in addition to that, I'm going to look at the opportunity, because if this person's very, very good, I want to also put them in a spot to where two things happen. One, financially, it's a step up for them, to where an employer's getting someone that's like, yeah, you know what, this person can do the job, but it's also a step up financially in their career. They'll live, breathe, and die for you. They're so happy to be here. Mm-hmm. I can go get you your head of sales from your direct competitor and all that. I've done it many times. And sometimes where it's a pure lateral move, you got a lot of prima donnas. And again, it's okay to have a good ego, and you need it in that business. But if it's a I don't really care attitude, then yeah, you may want that person, but they don't really care. So why do that? I'd rather not only get someone great, but I want their heart and soul invested in your company. And so I look at that from the candidate side. Financially, it's a step up. And from the company point of view, you know, they're getting someone that, yeah, you know what, you may not have been the director. Maybe you were the senior rep, but you're one step below a director, and you're ready for that next opportunity, and we're going to take a chance on you. That is usually paid off very, very well. It doesn't say I won't go do a lateral director to director. We do that too. But usually when I've found that I can satisfy two objectives here. One, give the candidate a step up in money, and two, the company gets someone that person is going to live, breathe, and die for you. They're so happy to be there. They want to be there, and you can just see it in everything that comes out in their whole demeanor. And so I really try to focus as much as I can on those attributes, because everybody wins.
Good.
Yes.
Keith, I don't remember, do you work on sales and marketing positions as well, or just mostly technology?
I do more marketing than sales. But I'll address the sales, and Tim is a very hard act to follow. That being said, I try and do very similar to what he does. I try and get what is actually motivating that given candidate, not so much for the particular position, but in general. In other words, why, if they are doing well, why are they interested in talking with me? You know, what's going on with them? What does my client have to offer that can satisfy what their motivators are? And I drill down and find out what that is and go off of that, basically, and do what Tim does.
I think for me, my main goal a lot of times when I interview sales professionals is just for them to talk as much as possible. I think for me, it's important for a salesperson to be articulate, to be able to explain complex thoughts well. So I tend to ask a lot of open-ended questions. So before I present any sales professionals to my clients or the hiring manager, I would have asked them various questions, including walk me through one of the most recent and complex deals that closed from beginning to end. I would ask them about their quota. I would ask them, what specific technologies had they sold in the past. I would ask them. I would just get them to talk as much as possible. Now, what I think the other thing too is what is leading me to not to feel for them. I feel like they're not a good fit. What makes them not a good fit? It's not just about people not meeting the quotas per se, but also giving the entire package. Is it because you're building a net new territory, greenfield territory? How are you prospecting? Is the goal unattainable? Is the technology just one of those up-and-comer technologies where you really have to evangelize? How about your tenure in a specific company? Have you been there for 5 years and then the latter 3 years you just don't meet quotas? I want to find out all of those reasons, and I dive deeper into the deal closure. If they become really general, and the more questions I ask, the more general they become, I'm like, oh, this is really strange. Why is this person so general? I feel like there are certain questions that you have to be really specific, and there are questions that you should be, they're answers that you should be general. It shouldn't really be reverse. So those are the couple of things I look for in a strong salesperson. Now, how about industry trends, or maybe it can be recruitment trends that you're seeing, candidates that you've been speaking with, and some patterns that you're noticing? Anything you want to talk about?
Basically, I've been noticing more of what I've been seeing for the past several years, which is, Tim was saying at the beginning, very much of a candidate-driven market, but I think that's actually sort of an illusion. Mm-hmm. Is there a tremendous demand for the very best people? Absolutely. And that's one very solid definition of a candidate-driven market. The thing is, there are loads of very good, highly qualified people who are not being touched because they don't fit the very selective bill that everybody's going afterwards. So in other words, everybody's going after the same small group of people in various industries, which most of them, by definition, are not going to be able to hire, when there are perfectly good people who would be able to hire, that they're not going after. And I see more and more of that happening.
What do you think, Tim?
Yeah, I'd say there's an element to that. It's the dating analogy. Mm-hmm. It's like, hey, there's the girl at the prom, or a lady will see a guy with a hot girl. It's like, I want him, and if you see a guy that's stag, it's like, I don't want him. So sometimes it's a perception issue, and sometimes you have to have that conversation with your hiring managers and say, is this really necessary? I mean, do they have to walk on water? Do they have to do this? Do they have to do that? A lot of that answer is no. Because in any position, and I've done this 15 plus years now, usually more often than not, you're going to get a candidate that's going to fit the bill 75 to 80%. And in any company you go into, you grow into the other 20. And yes. That what I mean by growing into the other 20% is that could be getting along with your teammates, learning how they do it here, fitting that environment and whatnot. If you have those core competencies and you can do the important things, that's a winner. And then that becomes something that where we as recruitment professionals need to work with the hiring managers. Doesn't mean we're going to water down the candidate base at all. Actually, nothing's further from the truth. Trying to make sure that you get the right person for the job in the fastest manner possible so the work can get done. Because usually if an engineering manager or a sales manager doesn't have something done, the work falls on them. Mm-hmm. And, if you have a budget requisition and the work's not getting done, that project's not getting done by the next quarter, you may not have budget for that, and that'll kill your whole department. So I don't ever look at it like we're not going to water it down or we're going to give you a subpar person. Nothing could be further from the truth. It's just the opposite. I want to make sure we're not laboring under any misconceptions here that just because that's what you may hear the buzz in the marketplace, the reality, since this is what we do for a living, this is what's going on. And our job is to help you get the best person possible in the shortest time frame. Not to sit there and just shove resumes at them. I mean, any hiring manager I know, sales or engineering, is going to get irritated beyond belief if you do that. But it's also our job to present what we're seeing in the marketplace to them. And sometimes, you know what, that's going to mean we're going to tell you some things you may not like to hear, or it may contradict some things you hear out in the marketplace. However, we are trying to help you get it done in the shortest time possible for all the reasons I stated just a moment ago.
And I cannot agree more. There are at least two ways to look at this, the whole candidates market thing. On the one hand, we've all recruited people from a competitor for our clients, and I'm sure we've all encountered candidates, even from a competitor, whom we find very unappealing and nothing spectacular about the person's accomplishments. And there are those whose reputation just precedes them. And everyone in the industry knows how so-and-so is great. And those are the individuals they're the ones who's pushing for the candidates market. Now, on the other hand, as recruitment professionals, we're the ones day in and day out talking with candidates, hunting candidates, figuring out what motivates them. And we do have the responsibility to educate our clients and lead them to asking questions or asking themselves questions that will help fill the role faster. So, for example, a recent conversation I had with a VP who would like candidates from a specific set of companies who are well-known and an enterprise-level company. And I spoke with a candidate who came across incredibly intelligent on the phone and has sold for companies that are completely greenfield and was very successful at it. So I presented this candidate to his VP and I told him, look, this person isn't from the list of companies you want me to recruit from, but if he's successful selling a technology that's maybe 5 years behind ours and did it successfully, you should really take a look at this person. So long story short, within 3 meetings, this person was hired and he's still with the company and is closing deals left and right. I know, Keith, I asked you, about trends and trends that you notice in the marketplace. How about you, Tim? Anything that you want to add to what we've talked about so far?
Sure. Well, I can a couple things, right? A couple things real quick. I'd say if you're going to succeed with, very sought after candidates right now, you're going to have to very much offer flexible work options. Mm-hmm. Now, I know some can't do that, but a lot of them just don't want to do that. And what you're finding is you're finding that your competition will.
Yeah.
And I've got a very senior level search going on for, a very high level engineering position. And this is part of it. And then we're actually fine with that. They're fine doing some on site, some off site, and that's why we're winning. And, in the beginning, didn't start out that way. They lost a few people. We had to come back and had to have a conversation with why were we losing these senior level people. And this is why. And, and especially if you're in an information-based profession, you can do this job from anywhere. And the key that I found is people, especially the higher up you go, look, you didn't make it to that income level or that title by not doing your job. You wouldn't succeed. You wouldn't make it. You wouldn't have been at your job that long. And I found that if you give people, set proper expectations, working with the teams, whatnot, is what you need to do, and then give them the freedom to do that job that fits with their family dynamic, a couple things happen. One, you'll get their heart and soul. Two, you're going to keep them away from your competition. And if you don't offer that to some degree, I can guarantee you most of your competitors will, and you're going to have probably 5 guys like me calling your top engineering staff, because most of the people I call, I call people on job boards too. A lot of wonderful people. They may have been a startup, had a layoff. There's a lot of wonderful people there. But I'd say 80-85% of what I do, I'm calling people that are very happily employed. So
yes.
If this is the dynamic, and unless that's just the way it's got to be and everyone knows it, usually in engineering it's not, or sales it's not, you can do it from just about anywhere. If you don't offer that option, I'm seeing companies lose left and right. And I advise hiring managers and my clients that I take on, I say this is a selling proposition for us. Because if you're not able to do it, that's one thing. If you just don't want to do it, we'll still proceed with that and we'll find you someone like that. But let me tell you what's going to happen. How do you know? Because I am one of those guys. I'm that guy. I'm the guy that's going to call your competitor and call your top people. On any given day. And if I call your top rep or your top engineer and say, how'd you like to come here and do the same thing, get a bump in pay and have some flexibility, do you really think that person is not going to want to talk to me? So I'd say from a company point of view, understand that you got to have some flexibility. From a candidate point of view, look, cockiness and a little bit of ego, no problem. Arrogance, not going to make it. And if you do want that flexibility as a candidate, you have to demonstrate that you were successful in doing that before. And if that company is going to trust you with that latitude, then perform beyond their wildest expectations. Don't give them a reason to regret it.
Yeah, something I want to add to that too is, I know a lot of candidates, they really want to find a workplace that has strong company culture. While I don't necessarily think, having that flexibility necessarily it's all about the company culture, but I feel like if a company, now I feel like at some point it's going to bite me in the butt. I feel like with a company that only wants people to be on site all the time, you're potentially looking for candidates with very similar way of working and very similar mindset. If you have a bunch of people who can only work when they're surrounded by people and not people who work better by being alone or have like different work methods, then you have like a bunch of inbreed people that think similarly, act similarly, like similar things. That is not necessarily beneficial for company culture. So as much as this is a really good point when it comes to how to attract great talents, it's also a good thing for candidates to discuss further. And it's not because, I just really need that flexibility for myself, which is true, but also, in order for a company to have diversity, to have strong culture, there has to be diverse way of thinking, diverse way of operating, and a diverse way to achieve success.
Well, yeah, and I'll add one more thing to that. When you're willing to entertain candidates that want to work that way, you open up your candidate pool 100-fold. And so if the person doesn't need to be on site and you don't care, as long as they're going to work whatever time zone hours you're in, then they could be in Montana, New York, a different part of the world. I have one client where we had some people in Israel, we had some people in England, we had some people in Germany, and you know what? We had no problems. None. Not one. And had we not given that latitude, we would have been just kind of stuck with a local market, which was some wonderful people here, but you're all chasing some of the same group of folks. If you're a company and you're willing to entertain that idea, if you can, you increase your recruiting efforts by 100-fold just from that aspect alone.
Yep, that makes perfect sense. Now, I do want to be considerate of all of our time. It's at the 45th minute mark here. If you don't have anything you want to add, I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for your time. I will talk to you in about a month again.
Excellent. Take care, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye now.